some of the things, it's really interesting. I started studying him in 1981, and I just was so attracted actually by who he was and what he stood for, because he was a man who transformed dramatically during the period of his life. He, as I said, he was a great genius. He came from a long line of Harvard graduates. And, all of them went to Harvard and so forth. And so, Bucky was going to go to Harvard. And so they did. His parents and everybody, they ponied up, the tuition for 4 years of Harvard. And Bucky went to Harvard, and it bored him. And so one day, Bucky liked to have a good time. So he took 4 years of Harvard tuition, and he went to New York City, and in 3 days he blew it on dancing girls. He said it was the greatest party in the history of New York City. Well, his relatives were not impressed, and they became very angry, and they disowned him from the family, and he went and he worked for some, actually a shipping company, and he did some really amazing things, and Bucky, grew up. So they thought, finally, okay, well, Bucky's ready for Harvard. So they all ponied up now, and, they got him the tuition for Harvard, and he went to Harvard. But Harvard hadn't changed all that much from what he had recalled, and it was just as boring as it had been the first time. So one day he took 4 years of Harvard tuition, and he went to New York City, and he blew it on 3 days of dancing girls. They said it was either the first or second best party in the history of New York City. And at that point, everybody just owned him. And so he married a woman, and she had some money, and he started working his way through her money. And he was a kind of a party guy, and then he had a couple of children, and his first daughter was very sickly, almost from birth, and her 4th birthday was coming up, and so Bucky was going to the Harvard-Yale game, football game, and so his daughter said, he said, well, can I get you something, for your birthday from at the game? And she said, yes, Daddy, can you get me a cane? And remember back in the days they had the cane and had the pennant on top? So that's what she wanted. He said, oh yeah, darling, I'll get you that. So anyway, he went to the game, and he was having a good time at the after party, and he was having such a good time he missed his train, and then missed another train and another train, and anyway, 2.5 days later he came back on his daughter's 4th birthday, and there was cars parked out in front of the house. And so he walked in, and the doctor met him at the bottom of the stairs and said, Mr. Fuller, you need to get upstairs right away and see your daughter. She's really very ill. And so he went upstairs and went in the room, and he said, hi, darling, how you doing? Happy birthday. And she said, Daddy, did you bring me the cane? And he said, no, darling, I forgot. And she closed her eyes and died on her 4th birthday. And after that, he went downhill. Everything he tried in business failed. He couldn't get over the loss of his daughter. And one day he decided he would end it. And he was walking on the shores of Lake Michigan, and he decided he would jump in and swim out as far as he could. He knew he'd never make it back. The water was very cold. And as he was preparing to jump into the water, he was struck by what he described as an incredible flash that went off in his mind. And in that moment, it was so powerful it knocked him to the pavement. And in that moment, he realized he had no right to take his life. That instead, he must become a humanitarian, and that he must travel the world, and he must love comprehensively with no one and no thing left out. And he did. From that day forward, he was probably one of the world's greatest humanitarians. He, as a matter of fact, during the Cold War, this was during the heart of the Cold War, he was asked to debate the top Soviet scientists about Western science versus Eastern science and Soviet science. And so it was very structured. 45 minutes for the top Soviet scientist, 45 minutes for Bucky, and many people from the Politburo were there to listen to this. And so the Soviet scientist came out and he talked about Soviet science and how great it was and how much superior it was to Western science and so forth and so on. And then Bucky came out and he started talking about how science could and should be made for the benefit of all human beings, and that is what the real blessing was in science. And the 45 minutes came the guy, and I mean, I know there are always reasons for everything, but he died the week before I was scheduled to meet him, and that was actually a very sad day.